States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mrs. Cron, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Casper?
Here.
Mr. Demick?
Here.
Mrs. Miller? Mr. Adomo?
Here.
Mr. Sarnes?
Here.
Mrs. Schmidt? Here. Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mrs. Yardley? Here. Dr. Yarnell?
Here. Thank you. Questions and comments from guests. Please come to the podium, give your name and municipality, and please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. So do we have anyone who wishes to address the board? No? Okay, then we'll move forward. I am going to change the order because I'd like you to meet one of our appointees. So we'll start with the Personnel Committee. That would be Mr. Deming, and he has 2 motions.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. 2 motions came today. One is a motion, number 1, a motion to accept with regret the resignation of Dr. Susan Maurer-Benda, who's the principal of Guth Elementary.
Do we have a second to that motion? Second. Moved by Mr. Deming and seconded by Mrs. Schmidt to approve the resignation of Dr. Susan Maurer-Benda. Comments or questions from board members? I simply want to thank Dr. Maurer-Benda. I think she's done a great job at Guth. I know some of us had the opportunity to be there for her 50th, not her 50th, let me rephrase that. The school's 50th anniversary. I don't really want to get in too much trouble tonight. It was very well done, and I think she's done a great job at Guth. We're sorry to see her leave. I know she has a great opportunity in Ben Salem Step Up, so congratulations to her. Any other comments or questions from the board? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Deming.
The second one is a motion relative to the retirement of Dr. Creedon. And this motion is to approve the transfer of Gina DeBona to become the principal at Pennridge High School effective July 1, 2014 at a salary of $131,975 for the 2014-2015 year.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Deming and seconded by Mr. Casper to approve Ms. DeBona as the principal of Pennridge High School. Comments or questions from board members? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. I believe Mrs. DeBona. We're not quite 2,400 here, but would you like to say a few words, Ms. DeBona?
Should I go to the podium or am I okay?
Please do, because I think people will need to hear you. Maybe it'll make it a little easier.
Keep it short.
I think Ray just said keep it really long. No, I see so many of my North staff members, so I have to say I will miss you guys. I told you today I will miss you guys immensely. But I want to thank Dr. Radigan, members of the board, and the cabinet for their confidence in me in this important position. I'm excited for the challenge. I'm excited to meet you folks up at the high school. And I have to say again, I will miss my staff at North. So thank you.
Thank you. Good luck. Another glass ceiling broken at Pennridge. At this point, we'll move back to the finance portion of this. Mr. Sarnes.
Personnel.
Nice night.
Thank you, Dr. Yarnell. I'd like to make a motion to approve the final general fund budget for the fiscal year 2014-2015 with revenues of $119,543,034 and expenditures of $121,022,235 and authorize the use of $1,100,000 from the PSERS fund balance commitment and set the tax rate at 129.6227, which is an increase of 3.61% from 2013-2014.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Sarnes and seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the final general fund budget for the fiscal year 2014-2015. Comments or questions from board members? Mr. Thompson.
What we didn't really hear was the background for what happens in down years after this. That for each year that we use this, the PSERS fund to help us with this year, as long as that works, as long as we have that money coming to draw on. When that money's gone, that means we will need more, we will have to fill that hole. Plus there are other holes. We already know that we're facing, I think, $5 million in deficits for next year in addition to these other increases that are coming. And none of us on the board like the idea of having to raise our taxes to the 3.61%, but we all believe that this is our responsibility to our schools and to our kids. We have really no choice. So we ask if that we will be going forward with trying to do the best we can with the resource that we have provided. Please, if there's anyone, if you want to march on somebody and holler at somebody, the board put in a resolution that we have sent to all of the other school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. What Bill read to you, this is not our problem. This is what's happening here is happening to one degree or another in every school district, virtually every school district in the state of Pennsylvania. And when we're facing the problems that they have, they're facing their own shortfalls, that their revenue is going to be short. And it just means that we're all going to be under increasing pressure going forward. And it will take all of our goodwill and all of our efforts to try to find ways to make this work. So I don't believe this is the best we can do, and full speed ahead.
Anyone else want to comment? Mr. Gasper.
There it goes. I just think that we started this in January. It's been a long haul. I think that Dr. Radigan, Kathy, her staff did a really good job of getting us to where we are. And I agree with things Mr. Thompson said. It's not going to get any easier. And there were cuts that were never made here before, or people not being replaced. I think that's a first here in our district. So the future is going to be tough, and nice turnout tonight. I'd like to, hopefully people will come out. We're already on to the next budget cycle before we even finish this one. So we don't have to make program cuts. So we don't have to lose employees. So we don't have to hurt, the future of our education here in Pennridge. We all need to come together and know what's going on. And we've got contracts coming up. We got medical increases. I mean, it's not going to get any easier. I'm glad it seems like we're all in agreement. I liked working with this board on this budget. I think it was a good team effort, which I was really happy to be part of that. And I just want to shut up and say thank you, Kathy and Dr. Radigan and your staff, because I think you did a good job.
Anyone else? Mrs. Yardley?
I just have a brief comment. I know Mrs. Johnson always likes to talk about using all the tools in our toolbox, and I think that this budget does that we are reducing staff. We're increasing class sizes, some of the class sizes at the high school. We're using some of our committed funds. We've made cuts where we can, and we also have a tax increase. So there's, we're using all the tools and options available that we have, and everybody has a part of this budget. Yeah.
Mr. Deming.
This is a terrible situation. This district is just as all the other 500 and some districts in this state are going to have to learn eventually to live within their means. It's going to be terribly painful. This year is terribly tough. It's just going to get worse in the future.
Anyone else? I will comment, because I can never not comment. I do think, I have great concern, because unlike most years, at least Harrisburg talks about the budget, even though they may not pass it until December 23rd, and give it as a Christmas present rather than as a 4th of July present. But this year, there's so very little talk, other than the fact that every month is a further shortfall of their budgeted amounts, which can't mean anything good. Plus the fact that we have in the background, and unfortunately in my opinion, it really is in the background, the discussion about what, if anything, should be done with the retirement pension crisis. And I see no great progress on that front. And if there is no great progress, as both Mr. Sarnes and Mr. Thompson have laid out, there are bigger deficits in our future and in the future of the state as well. So that doesn't bode well for future budgeting for sure. And the pension percentage numbers are projected from year to year, but they really depend on what the board itself decides in December, and then we have to live with it in the following year. As we saw in the 2000s, sometimes we project numbers that don't come true, and that's okay as long as the numbers are, too low, but when they're too high, it makes for a great problem for us, and that's what has happened here, and will continue unless some major change occurs, and I just don't see it happening. So I think, as Mr. Deming has said, and Mr. Thompson and Mr. Sarnes, more pain is coming. So we need to prepare for that as best we can and try to do the best we can with the resources we have, which are limited, no doubt about it. So with that, are there any further questions or comments? If not, then I'd like to call the question, and this is a roll call vote. So Mrs. Cron, you're on.
Mr. Casper?
Yes?
Mr. Deming?
No.
Mrs. Miller? Mr. Regomo?
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yardley?
Yes.
Dr. Yarnell?
Yes. Motion carries 7-1, correct? Good. Mr. Sarnes, you have obviously some related motions that have to do with the budget.
Yes. Before I do that, since there is a lot of the members of our professional staff here, both the PEA and the PSEA, I just want to ask your help. We're negotiating with both of you. I hope you realize through tonight the seriousness of the situation. And, I for one don't have kids in the district right now, but I do at these board meetings, when I come, the best part of the board meeting is the student recognition, and the first part of the board meeting when we hear of all the accomplishments of our students, especially all the extracurricular activities, which I hope we don't have to get rid of. I mean, that to me would be serious. So I hope you'll work with us as we go through the negotiation process. I mean, it's going to take sacrifice from all of us, so I just appreciate your help. And I want to thank, also I want to echo what Mr. Casper said about the cooperation from board members. It was a pleasure working with all of you and Mrs. Johnson, and got a little rocky at the beginning, but I appreciate your staying with it, so thank you. Okay, I'll move on to the next motion. The next motion is to approve the levying of taxes, which include the 1% earned income tax, the 1/2 of 1% real estate transfer tax, the $5 local service tax, and the 129.6227 mills of real estate taxes.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Sarnes and seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the earned income tax, real estate transfer tax, local services tax, and the real estate tax. Comments or questions from board members? If not, then this too needs to be a roll call vote, I presume. Yes?
I agree.
Mrs. Cron?
Mr. Casper?
Yes?
Mr. Deming?
Again, I have to say no.
Mr. Regomo?
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yardley?
Yes.
Dr. Yarnell?
Yes. Motion carries 8-1. 7-1, thank you for the correction. Thank you for the motion. Mr. Sarnes?
The next is a motion to approve the 2014 homestead and farmstead exclusion resolution as attached.
We have a second. Thank you. It's moved by Mr. Sarnes, seconded by Mr. Deming to approve the 2014 homestead and farmstead exclusion resolution. Comments or questions from board members? Mrs. Johnson, you're not a board member, but please.
May I add something?
Yes, please.
Yes, as part of my earlier presentation, I provided the amount of tax assessment that would be excluded from the value of the bill. However, I did not actually give the dollar value, and that's $195.60 that the state will be paying those properties who have an approved homestead and farmstead.
Thank you. And I believe, if I recall correctly, there are more than 11,000 properties that are qualify for this exclusion in this district out of roughly 19,000. So less than 2/3 of our properties qualify. And that is a little less than last year's exclusion, or very similar.
It's very similar.
So needless to say, the gaming numbers were not high enough to offer more money this year. Other comments or questions from board members? If not, now this does not need to be, or should be?
None of them have to be. I think it makes sense to have all of them.
Okay. We'll get our money's worth from Mrs. Cron. Your turn.
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Deming?
Yes.
Mr. Regomo?
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yardley?
Yes.
Dr. Yarnell?
Yes. And that passes. And what was the count? 8-0. Thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to the fourth motion. Mr. Sarnes.
The next one is the motion to set the installment dates of August 31st, October 31st, and December 15th, 2014.
Thank you. Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Sarnes, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the installment date for tax payments. Comments or questions from board members? If not, Mrs. Cron?
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Deming?
Yes.
Mr. Regomo?
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yardley?
Yes.
Dr. Yarnell?
Yes. Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Sarnes?
The next is a motion to approve the developed premium rates for the 2014-15 school year for the medical, vision, prescription, and dental as presented tonight at the Finance Committee meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Sarnes, seconded by Mr. Thompson to approve the premium rates for the 2014-2015 school year. Comments or questions from board members? If not, Mrs. Cron?
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Deming?
Yes.
Mr. Regomo?
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yardley?
Yes.
Dr. Yarnell?
Yes. Motion carries 8-0. Mr. Sarnes?
And the final one is a motion to authorize the administration to order the technology as presented tonight at the Finance Committee meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Sarnes, seconded by Mrs. Schmidt to approve the ordering technology. Comments or questions from board members? If not, Mrs. Cron?
Mr. Casper?
Yes.
Mr. Deming?
Yes.
Mr. Regomo?
Yes.
Mr. Sarnes?
Yes.
Mrs. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Yardley?
Yes.
Dr. Yarnell?
Yes. Okay. That concludes what's on the agenda. I believe we were going to make a motion to essentially amend policy tonight. And who has the motion at this point?
Mr. Casper?
Facilities.
Okay, Mr. Casper, you are on.
I just had a comment though, because reviewing the policy 708.1, which is the disposal of surplus property, it doesn't actually say where the, doesn't say that it has to go to public service, it doesn't say where it goes in the policy, it just says it has to be obsoleted, which we've done, so we're not actually changing the policy, it's a procedure, it's an administrative procedure. So I don't know if Mr. Cox can comment on that.
I would agree with that. The board isn't really amending the policy. I think the policy allows, the policy as written allows the board to do what it's doing tonight. I think really it's just a formality to give Mrs. Johnson a degree of comfort in handling the surplus books in the way proposed. So it's just a housekeeping matter, I would say.
Does that require a change? We're not changing policy?
No, I don't think,
So it doesn't
I don't
sound
think
like-
this action requires a change in the policy.
Or do we still need a motion?
Well, I have a motion, but the end of the motion is to sell the books through public surplus. So should I just strike that? That's my motion.
No, I think that's Mrs. Johnson's plan, so I would read the motion as I've read it and then see if it has the support of the board. At least, that's my suggestion.
Mr. Gasko.
Okay, motion to authorize the administration to make available the surplus books currently housed in the libraries at Seiler and Grass Elementary Schools to the district students, with any remaining surplus books to be sold through public surplus.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Casper and seconded by Mrs. Yardley to approve allowing students to take the books from the obsolete list. Now, I have a comment or a question, and that is, would board members want to extend this to other schools? Because it seems to me that this is very specific as written.
That's fine. Obviously, it can just be by simple
So,
amendment.
Mr. Casper, would you allow that amendment?
Yes.
Mrs. Yardley, would you allow
Yes,
that
it's
amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so there's an amended motion on the floor for all the schools. So now, are there other questions from board members? Mrs. Johnson, sorry, you're not a board member, but
Just logistics for me. Tonight, we only have, we have the high school, so my question will be, if we're amending that tonight, I know the high school has a number of boxes of books that they may or may not want to do this. Are we extending that to them tonight to do it, and we're holding those books to see what they want? Or are we just tonight going to deal, I know you just amended the motion, but are you just gonna deal with Seiler and Grass tonight, and then allow me to change the administrative guidelines for any future books coming forward?
my suggestion would be to do it for the elementary schools tonight. Then it's an even playing field.
I believe we're making a motion though that allows the administration to use its good sense. And I would like to suggest that the board pass that motion and let the administration do its thing.
That's right, that's really what the board said.
Okay, any other comments? Okay,
Does that mean, because I was thinking that, would there be any circumstance that you would not want to send this to surplus? That you, are we committing to something that we don't really want to tie our hands in case at some point down the road, we're making a big deal out of a very small item? Do you really want to tie yourself to that we're going to commit to send everything that's left to surplus? Or some other way of getting rid of it?
That's what we've been doing. Because I think if we, I don't have the administrative guidelines with me, but I think we can say something to the effect that, you know, first it goes to public, in this case, first it will go to students, then it goes to public surplus. If it doesn't sell in public surplus, then we discard it as recycling. So that's how, I believe that's how the guidelines.
now are we ready to vote? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. Thank you. That's the end of the agenda. The announcements. The school board is scheduled to meet again, its regular June meeting on June 23rd, 2014. It will be at 7:30 here in the district administration office. There will be an executive session tonight following this meeting for the purpose of personnel reasons. At this point, we are back to comments or questions from guests. No? I'm sorry.
I have just a quick
Staff
question, as a librarian. So I'm going to put, I just want for clarity's sake, which Michael, so I have 5,000 books. You know, 1,000 go to the kids in a perfect world at middle school. 2 go to kids, but, so the other books, this is my question for you. how do I keep track of all of what's going out the door? Because I can't give Mrs. Johnson now a list. I gave her the weeding log, they've been out of the school. So now am I responsible for writing a list to go to public surplus? Can I just give the books, they've been deaccessioned, they're out of the collection, so that, I think I'm answering your question. So that's so now I can put them in a box and you can send them to public surplus?
Just work it out.
Okay. All right, just remember, you're on tape, we'll work it out. Okay, great. Fabulous.
Anyone else? None? Comments or questions from the press? Hearing and seeing none, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you for coming.